I never imagined I'd be handing my husband divorce papers during what was meant to be our vow renewal ceremony. Yet, that's exactly what happened when his assistant stood up and revealed she was pregnant with his child. It's surreal how quickly everything can shatter, leaving you to make life-altering decisions in an instant, decisions you're never prepared for. I can still hear the shocked gasps from our guests, feel the ground slip from under me, and see the look of disbelief on my husband's face, not from getting caught, but from being exposed. Before we dive back in, let us know where you're tuning in from. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button because tomorrow, I've got something even more special lined up just for you. The house was quiet when I received the email from Margaret Chen confirming the divorce papers had been filed. It felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down at an abyss that had, until now, been too daunting to face. In just 90 days, my marriage to Greg would officially be over, and my life, our life, would be irrevocably altered. My stomach twisted with the familiar cocktail of emotions: relief, fear, sadness, and uncertainty. But there was something else too, something unexpected, the slightest glimmer of hope. As I scrolled through the email again, rereading Margaret's note about filing, I couldn't shake the thought that this might actually be the beginning of something new. Maybe the end of my marriage wasn't just the end of everything I'd known, it was the start of something else. Something I couldn't even name yet, but I could feel it, pulsing just beneath the surface. I didn't have time to dwell on it. The kids would be home from their after-school activities soon, and I needed to focus. The hours had blurred together since I'd decided to file for divorce months ago. I'd been so busy with the logistics of the separation, finding new living arrangements, reworking our finances, managing the kids' emotions, that I hadn't taken the time to think about what I wanted for myself. I had given so much of myself to Greg, to our family, for so many years that I felt like a stranger to myself. But now, with the divorce almost final, there was room for me to breathe again. That's when Amanda called. We hadn't spoken in years, but I remembered her well. She had been a few years ahead of me in design school and had always been the one everyone admired. She was the picture of success: confident, talented, and ambitious. I had admired her from afar back when I was pursuing my design career before life swept me into marriage and motherhood. I'd put my career on hold to support Greg and raise our children. I hadn't regretted it. But now, with the pieces of my life scattered across the floor like a puzzle waiting to be put back together, Amanda's call felt like a lifeline. "Ellie, it's Amanda. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. I'm reaching out because there's a position that just opened up at Lakeside Interiors, and I was hoping you might be interested." I blinked, my breath catching. Lakeside Interiors, one of the most respected design firms in the city. The firm had always been on my radar, even when I wasn't actively designing. But the idea of working there felt impossible. After so many years away from the field, could I even do it? I cleared my throat. "I haven't been working in design for a while, Amanda. My background's a bit rusty." "I know," she replied, her voice warm and understanding. "But I've seen your work before, and I remember your talent. Plus, we're looking for someone who understands how to balance beauty and function. Family-friendly luxury is a niche we're focusing on right now, and I know you've got that in spades." I wasn't sure if it was the words themselves or the hope they inspired, but I could feel something stir inside me, something I hadn't felt in years. This could be a chance to rediscover myself. "I don't know if I'm ready," I admitted, the uncertainty in my voice almost tangible. "You won't know until you try," she said with quiet confidence. "Come in for an interview. We can talk more then. And in the meantime, we'd be happy to discuss the possibility of starting on a project-based role while you get your credentials up to date." The idea of it all felt exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. But before I could overthink it, she added, "I'll send you the details. Take your time, but just know the offer stands." I hung up the phone with my mind racing. This was everything I'd once dreamed of. But now, in the midst of a divorce and the chaos of rebuilding my life, it seemed almost impossible. I would have to juggle courses at the community college, find childcare for the kids, and somehow managed to keep my head above water in a new professional world that had shifted significantly since I left it. But was it worth it? The idea of diving back into design, of creating spaces again, of building something beautiful and meaningful from scratch, pulled at me with a force I couldn't ignore. That night, after the kids had gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen island, a glass of wine in hand, thinking it over. My portfolio sat next to me, a reminder of the designs I'd created years ago when I was fresh out of school, eager to leave my mark on the world. I hadn't opened that portfolio in years. In fact, I hadn't even thought about design in the way I used to. But now, as I looked at the sketches I'd once poured my heart into, I felt a spark of something familiar, something close to passion. The timing was as terrible as it was perfect. My marriage was ending. My family was splitting. But for the first time in a long time, I was thinking about what I wanted, not what Greg or the kids needed. And I realized that the timing didn't matter. I couldn't wait for the perfect moment to begin again. I had to make it. The next morning, I sat down at my computer and typed out a detailed email to Amanda, expressing my interest in the position at Lakeside Interiors. I felt a wave of nerves as I clicked send, but there was something else there too. Anticipation, excitement. The first step had been taken. The following day, I went to the community college to look into the courses I would need to complete my design certificate. The campus was quiet, the summer break lending an air of peace to the usually bustling halls. I walked into the design department and found Dr. Parker, the program director, who was welcoming and encouraging. She looked over my transcripts, patiently explaining what courses I would need to take to catch up on the latest design software and building codes. "You've got a strong foundation, Ellie," she said. "It's just a matter of updating your skills, and we'll make a plan for that." After an hour of reviewing my options, we mapped out a schedule. I could take 2 intensive summer courses, one in digital design tools and one in contemporary materials and methods, then dive into a full course load in the fall. If all went well, I could complete the certificate by spring. And I could start working as a trainee with Lakeside Interiors as soon as my classes began. I left the college that day with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. The road ahead would be challenging, but it felt manageable now. For the first time in a long while, I felt in control. I wasn't just reacting to the changes in my life, I was driving them. The divorce was still looming, the changes in our family dynamics still raw, but I was determined to move forward. This was the beginning of something new, not just professionally, but personally. I was no longer defined by my role as a wife or a mother. I was reclaiming something I had lost. A part of myself that had been buried for far too long. And I was ready to fight for it. As the weeks went by, I found myself thrown into a whirlwind of change. The summer courses were both exhilarating and exhausting. I was learning new digital design tools, becoming reacquainted with the technical side of the profession, and stretching my creative muscles in ways I hadn't done in years. The classes were challenging, but I relished the opportunity to reignite a passion that had been dormant for so long. Each new project felt like a small victory, a step closer to the professional future I was trying to reclaim. At the same time, life at home was shifting too. The house felt emptier without Greg, even though he came by regularly to pick up the kids or drop them off after his weekend visits. He was more distant now, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps because he was trying to figure out his new life with Vanessa, the woman he was having a child with. The complexity of the situation weighed heavily on me, but I kept my focus on what was in front of me. My new professional life was coming together. I could handle the emotional challenges later. The kids, to my relief, were adjusting remarkably well. Ben, always the sensitive one, had his moments of frustration, especially when he missed Greg. But Lily, who was more like me, driven, perceptive, seemed to understand things in a way that made me proud. She was the first to notice the subtle changes in me, how I was coming back to life in ways that were hard to put into words. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, I was in the kitchen preparing a late-night snack when my phone buzzed with a message from Catherine. "How's it going? Have you heard back from Amanda yet?" I smiled at the text. My sister, always the motivator, had been checking in almost daily, encouraging me to stay on track. I had told her about my meeting with Amanda, the potential job, and how excited yet terrified I was to take the plunge. She had been unwavering in her belief that I was capable of more than I realized. "I've got a meeting on Tuesday. They're interested in me for a part-time position to start in September." I typed back quickly, hitting send. Catherine's reply was almost immediate. "That's amazing. You're going to crush it. Just don't let them see how terrified you are. Remember who you are." I could almost hear her voice in the message. Bold, confident, a little bit bossy. I chuckled to myself. Catherine had always been my cheerleader, even when I wasn't sure I deserved one. She had pushed me to go after things I thought were out of reach. And here I was, doing exactly that. For the first time in a long time, I was doing something just for me. The interview with Lakeside Interiors was everything I had hoped it would be. Amanda, along with the team, was welcoming and professional, clearly impressed with the portfolio I'd managed to assemble. I was honest with them about my timeline, about being in the middle of my certificate program, but they didn't seem to mind. They valued my experience, my perspective on family-friendly design, and the unique balance I could bring between beauty and function. Amanda looked at me after we finished the tour of the office, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Ellie, I think this could be a great fit. We're looking for someone who understands how to make spaces that are functional for families but still feel luxurious, sophisticated. We need someone who knows how to make a house a home, not just a showpiece." I wanted to pinch myself. "That's exactly what I've been doing for years," I replied. "With the kids, with Greg. I've been creating a home that works for our family." She smiled. "Exactly. And that's why I think this could work. You don't just understand design, Ellie. You understand how people live in the spaces they inhabit." By the time I left the office, I had a formal offer on the table. It wasn't a full-time position, but it was more than I could have imagined just a few weeks ago. The flexibility was exactly what I needed as I adjusted to this new life. I was both thrilled and overwhelmed, but I knew deep down this was what I had to do. This was my moment to step forward, to find a new path that was entirely my own. At home, I continued to balance the demands of school, the kids, and the occasional project I managed to squeeze in for friends or family. The kids were thriving. Lily was taking after me more and more, her creativity blooming in ways that made me excited for her future. She had joined her school's art club, and I could see the spark in her eyes when she spoke about her latest project. Ben, always the more laid-back one, was doing well, adjusting to the changes with a maturity that sometimes astounded me. But there were moments, fleeting but real, where I found myself missing the life I had once had. Those moments would catch me off guard, usually when the house felt too quiet or when I realized there was no longer any routine shared between Greg and me. I would think of the times we had, the memories we had created, the love we'd once shared. But then, just as quickly, the clarity would return. I had made the right decision. As hard as it was, leaving Greg had been the right choice. I'd spent years putting his dreams and ambitions first. I had sacrificed my own, convinced that I was doing the right thing for our family. But now I saw that the only way I could truly be the best mother to my children, the best version of myself, was to be whole again. And that would require letting go of what I had been and stepping into the person I was meant to become. The first few weeks after the job offer were a whirlwind. I started working part-time at Lakeside Interiors, balancing my class schedule with my work. It was a juggle, but I was good at it. I had to be. The kids adapted easily to the changes. Greg, too, seemed to be adjusting, although his new life with Vanessa was a constant reminder of the fracture in our marriage. One Saturday morning, as I dropped the kids off at Greg's, Lily turned to me with a serious expression. "Mom, do you think Dad will be okay with the baby?" she asked. I paused. The question wasn't one I had expected. "What do you mean, sweetheart? Like, will he love it like he loved us? Or is it just because of Vanessa?" The pain that shot through me at her question was sharp, but I swallowed it down. "He'll love the baby, Lily," I said, choosing my words carefully. "Just like he loves you and Ben. Sometimes, things don't go the way we expect, But love is big enough for everyone. She nodded, but the look on her face told me that she understood more than I sometimes gave her credit for. I kissed her forehead before sending her off to Greg's for the weekend, grateful that she had such a thoughtful heart. The months passed quickly. The kids and I adjusted to our new routine, and my career at Lakeside Interiors started taking shape. The work was fulfilling, challenging, and exactly what I had been craving. I poured myself into each project, learning from Amanda and the rest of the team, while also trying to maintain balance at home. I continued to take my courses, slowly but surely completing the certificate I needed. By the time the holiday season approached, I could look back on everything that had happened in the past year and see how far I'd come. I wasn't the same person I had been when I first walked out of Greg's office that day with the divorce papers in hand. I had taken the hardest step I'd ever taken, and though the road ahead wasn't without its bumps, I was on a path that felt true to me. The phone rang one evening just before dinner. It was Amanda. "Ellie, I have a new project for you," she said. "It's a big one. A waterfront condo. The client's recently divorced and needs a new space that's both a sanctuary and a reflection of his new life. I think you're perfect for it." I couldn't help but smile. "Tell me more," I said, my voice steady, confident. Finally, I was embracing this new life, one full of possibilities, challenges, and a future that was entirely mine to design. The winter months settled in quietly, wrapping the city in a blanket of cold air and the promise of fresh starts. The kids and I spent the holidays in our redefined home, filled with new routines that felt just as warm as the old ones, though in different ways. Lily and Ben had adjusted seamlessly to our new life, their resilience and open-heartedness proving that kids, despite the turbulence in their lives, can be more adaptable than adults often give them credit for. They were thriving, and so was I. The new project at Lakeside Interiors was more than I could have imagined. It challenged every aspect of my creative ability. The client, Dr. James Harrison, was a trauma surgeon who had relocated to the city after a bitter divorce. His brief was clear: he wanted a sanctuary, a space to heal, to rest after long shifts, but also a place that reflected his new chapter in life. I dove into the design with fervor, crafting a vision that incorporated calm tones, natural light, and spaces that allowed for both solitude and the occasional gathering. I spent weeks sketching, creating mood boards, and analyzing the space until it felt like it was mine too. Every corner of the condo would reflect not just a space of luxury, but one of peace and renewal. It was a project that brought out everything I had learned over the past few months, from design techniques to the more personal aspects of what a home could represent. One afternoon, after a meeting with Dr. Harrison, Amanda pulled me aside in the office. "You've done an excellent job on this project, Ellie," she said, her eyes warm with approval. "This is going to be your breakout moment. I can feel it." I was humbled. I had worked so hard to get here, rebuilding my confidence in my work, in my place in the world, that I hadn't fully realized how far I'd come until Amanda's words hit me. But not everything was perfect. As my professional life blossomed, the personal side still had its complications. Greg continued to find his way through his new life, with Vanessa, his unborn child, and their newly merged world. I could see it, even from a distance, the difficulty he was having in reconciling his past with his present. I had to remind myself not to concern myself with his journey anymore. Our paths were no longer intertwined. And yet, in moments of quiet reflection, I found myself contemplating the strange mix of emotions I carried with me about him. Resentment for his betrayal, but also a measure of empathy for the man who was still trying to figure out how to rebuild his own life. As much as I was determined to carve out my own space, there were still days when I wished it didn't feel like we were moving further and further apart. The truth was, our relationship had been eroding for a long time before I had found the courage to act. The cracks had always been there, even before the affair, before the vow renewal that never happened. I had spent so many years trying to fill the gaps, to make the pieces fit, and in the end, they just didn't. One evening, Greg came to pick up the kids. The air between us was strained, yet we had learned to navigate it. We had both accepted that our relationship was no longer the focal point of our lives, that we were two people doing our best to co-parent while the pieces of our past life drifted farther behind us. How's the project coming? Greg asked as he lingered by the door, looking over the sketches I had left on the table. It's going well, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. I'm excited about it. He nodded, looking genuinely interested for a moment. I'm sure it'll be amazing. You always did have a way with spaces. The compliment, though sincere, made something twist in my chest. I smiled, acknowledging his words, but I knew they were just that, words. He wasn't really here anymore, just like I wasn't there with him. And maybe that was okay now. As Greg left with the kids, I stood at the door for a long moment, watching them go. My house, though filled with love, still carried the echoes of the life we once had. But now, I wasn't defined by it anymore. I was creating something new, piece by piece, day by day. I had a career again, a purpose I had long abandoned. More than that, I had me again. The turning point came one Friday morning when I received an email from Pine Hill Academy, the art school I had entered a design competition for several months prior. I had nearly forgotten about it amidst everything else that was happening in my life. The email was brief, but it stopped me cold. Subject: Congratulations. Pine Hill Academy Design Competition finalist. I opened it quickly, reading through the words that felt almost too surreal to comprehend. We are pleased to inform you that you have been selected as one of the finalists in the Pine Hill Academy Design Competition. After reviewing your submission, the committee was particularly impressed with your innovative approach to creating collaborative spaces for students. We invite you to present your work to the committee in 2 weeks' time. My hands trembled as I reread the email, feeling a rush of disbelief followed by overwhelming pride. This was the kind of recognition I had dreamed of for so long, the kind I had buried beneath years of self-doubt, under the weight of my marriage and the domestic responsibilities I had shouldered. I immediately called Catherine, barely able to contain my excitement. I did it, Kath. I'm a finalist, I exclaimed into the phone. There was a brief pause, and then she shouted in celebration. I knew it. I've been telling you all along. You were meant for this, Ellie. You're unstoppable. As the days passed, I prepared for the presentation. The nerves were there, yes, but they weren't the paralyzing kind. They were the kind of nerves you get before doing something you know you're ready for. I worked late into the evenings, perfecting the renderings and practicing my pitch. I could almost hear Amanda's voice in my head, reminding me that confidence was key. 2 weeks later, I stood in front of the selection committee, my heart pounding in my chest as I explained my vision for the Pine Hill Academy Student Center. The space would be vibrant, functional, and innovative, designed with the students' needs in mind, while reflecting a modern yet welcoming aesthetic. The presentation went smoothly, and the committee's feedback was positive. That night, I received another email. We are excited to inform you that your design has been selected as the winner of the Pine Hill Academy Design Competition. The weeks following the announcement were a blur. Not only had I won the competition, but I was also recognized in the design community as an up-and-coming talent. Lakeside Interiors gave me more responsibility, allowing me to take the lead on several new projects. And the recognition from Pine Hill Academy opened doors I had never imagined. I was being contacted by other potential clients, all eager to see what I could do. One evening, as I reflected on the path that had brought me here, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the pain I had endured. Without it, I wouldn't have found my way back to myself. I had carved a new identity, one not based on being someone's wife, but on being someone with her own passions, talents, and dreams. And while there would always be challenges ahead, parenting, work-life balance, integrating Greg's new family with mine, I no longer faced them with dread. I faced them with hope, with the understanding that each step forward was an opportunity to create something new. The phone buzzed once again, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a text from Rachel. Celebration drinks soon? You're on fire, girl. I smiled, texting back quickly. I'd love that. Let's do it. For the first time in years, I was excited about what was to come. The future, though uncertain, was wide open. The months following the Pine Hill Academy win seemed to unfold with an ease I hadn't anticipated. It was as if the universe, in all its chaotic beauty, had finally settled into a rhythm. The children and I had our routines down: school, extracurriculars, dinners at home, and occasional weekend trips to explore new parts of the city. Life, while not perfect, felt manageable. Greg and I continued our delicate dance as co-parents, our communication improving by necessity, but there were still days when the past loomed large, casting a shadow over the present. It had been almost a year since we decided to separate, and the emotional distance between us had only grown. It wasn't just the divorce, though. It was the way our lives had evolved into parallel universes, where our children were the only common thread. Still, there were moments, small ones, when I'd catch myself thinking about him. Not with longing, but with an almost academic curiosity. What had gone wrong? How had we allowed our marriage to unravel so completely? But I knew now that those questions didn't matter anymore. The unraveling had happened. The pieces were scattered, and I couldn't put them back together the way they once were. Instead, I had focused on what I could control, the new life I was building. The design projects at Lakeside Interiors were expanding, and my reputation was growing. I had made a name for myself in a way that felt both exhilarating and surreal. People recognized my work. My name appeared on projects and in conversations where it had never been before. It was validating, yes, but also humbling. Amanda, who had become more than just a boss, was now a trusted mentor, guiding me through the intricacies of the business side of design. She was sharp, discerning, and patient, teaching me things about client management and project budgeting that I'd never considered in the past. As much as I had poured my heart into the creative aspects of the work, I was learning the value of the behind-the-scenes mechanics that made the projects come to life. One crisp autumn afternoon, I found myself in a meeting with a high-profile client. A couple from a neighboring city who were relocating for work had hired Lakeside Interiors to redesign their home, an old brownstone they had purchased on a whim. The couple, charismatic and clearly used to getting what they wanted, had lofty ideas about the space. They wanted luxury. They wanted sophistication. And most importantly, they wanted their home to be an expression of their success. As I presented my initial design concepts, I could sense their interest waning. Their polite smiles felt forced, their nods perfunctory. When I finished, there was a brief pause, followed by the wife's carefully measured words. "It's good, but we were hoping for something more striking, more unique." I felt the familiar sting of self-doubt, that all too familiar voice whispering in the back of my mind that I wasn't good enough, that I couldn't meet their expectations. But then I remembered something Amanda had said to me just the week before: "Don't compromise your vision for the sake of appeasing clients." I took a deep breath. "I understand," I said, my voice steady despite the flicker of insecurity. "What I've presented is based on my interpretation of your vision for the space, but I can certainly adjust it to meet your expectations more precisely. Let's revisit your specific needs. What does unique mean to you?" The shift in the room was palpable. The client sat up straighter, suddenly engaged. We spent the next hour in a productive back and forth, discussing color schemes, textures, and ideas. By the end of the meeting, they were eager to move forward with the project, their once ambivalent demeanor replaced by enthusiasm. The experience left me with a new sense of confidence. Confidence that I had not only held my ground, but that I had pushed through my own insecurities to deliver something that would truly meet the client's needs. It wasn't just about the design. It was about reclaiming my power, about showing myself that I could navigate this world on my own, without relying on anyone's approval, especially Greg's. The following week, I received a call from Dr. Harrison, my first major client after Pine Hill Academy, thanking me for the progress we had made on his condo. "Ellie, you've exceeded my expectations. I can't wait to see the final result," he said, his voice warm with appreciation. It was that conversation that made me realize how far I had come, not just professionally, but personally. The Ellie Westbrook who had been so afraid to step out of the shadows of her marriage, who had hidden her talents in favor of supporting someone else's dreams, was gone. And in her place was a woman who was creating her own future, from the ground up. That evening, as I sat down to dinner with Lily and Ben, I felt a deep sense of peace. The children, laughing over a shared joke about school, were happy, genuinely happy, and that was all that mattered to me. I had long ago stopped measuring my success by Greg's standards, but now I saw that his success, or failure, no longer had any bearing on my own worth. I glanced around the table at my two kids, their eyes bright with excitement over their own little triumphs. Lily had recently joined the art club at school, and Ben had made the soccer team. They were growing up, not as the children of Greg and me, but as individuals in their own right. "You know what, Mom?" Lily said as she passed the potatoes, her voice casual but filled with an insight that always surprised me. "I'm glad you're doing what you love. You seem different. Like you're happier." My heart swelled. "I am, sweetheart. I really am." Ben grinned, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Yeah, we're not the only ones with big changes, huh?" I laughed, nodding. "Yeah, it's all about new beginnings." The next day, I walked into Lakeside Interiors for another meeting, my portfolio in hand. I had a new project on the horizon, and Amanda had tasked me with presenting some new concepts to a potential client. I felt ready for whatever came my way. For the first time in a long while, I realized that I wasn't just doing life, I was living it, fully and intentionally. And then, as I walked past Amanda's office, she called out to me. "Ellie, you're really making a name for yourself around here," she said with a knowing smile. "I knew from the start you were the real deal." That compliment, like the one Greg had given me so many months ago, landed differently now. It wasn't just about design. It was about the way I had fought to reclaim my sense of self, to rebuild from the wreckage of my past. "Thanks, Amanda," I said, smiling at her. "It's been a journey." "I'm proud of you," she replied. "You've earned every bit of it." As the seasons changed, so did I. The pieces of my past, my marriage, my struggles, my failures, were still part of me, but they no longer defined me. I had learned that even from the most painful chapters, something beautiful could emerge. I was not just surviving anymore. I was thriving. And in that thriving, I had found something I had never expected. Peace. Peace with who I had become, peace with what was yet to come, and peace with the truth that sometimes, things fall apart in order for something better to take root. As the weeks turned into months, my life continued to take shape in ways I never imagined. The children were adjusting well to the changes. I could see the transformation in their faces. Lily had become more confident, more outspoken, and I was proud of the young woman she was becoming. Ben, while still his playful and adventurous self, was learning to open up more, to express his feelings with less hesitation. I made sure they knew that I was there, every step of the way, whether they needed a listening ear or someone to push them forward. Greg and I had settled into a co-parenting rhythm, our exchanges focused on the children and practical matters. There were still moments of discomfort, of course. There were moments when our past, our shared history, would surface, reminding me of the years I'd spent compromising my own dreams for the sake of our family. But I was learning to let those moments pass without dwelling on them, like old echoes in a vast room. They were there, but they no longer had the power to define me. My work at Lakeside Interiors had flourished. I had completed several projects, some big and some small, but each one had been a triumph in its own right. And the Pine Hill Academy competition? It was everything I could have hoped for and more. The project I had designed for their new student center had been brought to life, and I stood there in awe as students and faculty marveled at the spaces I had created. The recognition from my peers, the industry buzz, it felt surreal. But even beyond the professional achievements, it was the internal shifts that were the most profound. I was no longer the woman who hid in the background, supporting everyone else's dreams while neglecting her own. I was the woman creating, shaping, and defining her own future. One evening, as I wrapped up another successful design meeting, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Celebration drinks tomorrow night at the usual spot? You're officially a design sensation, my friend." I smiled at the message. It had been a while since we'd gone out to celebrate just for fun. Life had been busy, but it had also been fulfilling in ways I hadn't anticipated. Absolutely. Let's do it. The next evening, Rachel and I met at a small bar downtown, a cozy spot that had become our regular hangout. The warm glow of the lights and the hum of conversations around us felt like a perfect backdrop for the milestones I had been achieving. "I can't believe how far you've come," Rachel said, raising her glass to me. "You've not only built a career, but you've completely rebuilt your life. You're a force, Ellie." I couldn't help but feel the weight of her words. It had been a long road, full of unexpected turns and painful lessons, but I was here, stronger, more certain of who I was, more certain of what I wanted. "Well, it's taken time," I said, smiling. "But it's all falling into place. And I'm just getting started." Rachel grinned, taking a sip of her wine. "I think you've only scratched the surface. Your next project, this big one with Dr. Harrison, it's going to be incredible. I can feel it." I nodded. Dr. Harrison's mid-century modern home had been one of my most exciting projects to date. A space with so much potential, so much character, and a client who was truly invested in the process. I had already started sketching ideas and was eager to dive into the next phase of the project. It was more than just design for me now. It was about creating spaces where people could thrive, where they could feel comfortable, inspired, and at home. A few days later, I found myself walking through the streets of Pine Hills, my mind still buzzing from the meeting with Dr. Harrison. As I passed by the mid-century modern house, it struck me how much had changed in such a short time. I wasn't just designing rooms anymore, I was designing lives. Each project had its own challenges, but it also had its own rewards. That evening, as I sat down with the kids for our usual dinner routine, I thought about how far we had all come. Ben was chattering about his soccer tournament, Lily was telling me about her latest painting, and the house was alive with the sound of their voices. I looked at them, their faces full of hope and possibility, and I realized just how important it was for them to see me live my truth. To see me take risks, pursue my dreams, and most importantly, be happy. After dinner, as I sat down to work on some design concepts, my phone buzzed with a message from Amanda. "We've got a potential new client who wants to meet with you. Can you come by the office tomorrow?" A new client. More work. More opportunities to grow. I felt the familiar rush of excitement mixed with the challenge of balancing everything. My career, the kids, and my own personal life. But I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I was ready. The next morning, I walked into the office feeling a renewed sense of purpose. It wasn't just about being good at what I did anymore. It was about owning it. It was about building something lasting, not just for me, but for my family. As I walked through the studio, Amanda waved me over. She was standing with a new client, a tall man in a sharp suit, who looked up with interest as I approached. "Ellie, meet Marcus Graves," Amanda said with a smile. "He's a CEO of a startup, and he's looking for a designer who can help bring his vision for a contemporary, sustainable office space to life. I thought of you immediately." I extended my hand to Marcus, feeling the familiar thrill of meeting someone who could change the trajectory of my work. "It's great to meet you, Marcus," I said, offering a confident smile. "Likewise," he replied, shaking my hand firmly. "I've seen some of your recent work. I'm impressed." I felt a wave of pride wash over me. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment when my hard work, my dedication, and my passion all collided into something tangible. I had earned my place here. As I left the meeting, I couldn't help but smile. The future, once so uncertain and daunting, now felt wide open. There would be challenges ahead, of course. There always were. But for the first time in a long time, I was ready to face them head-on. With strength, resilience, and a vision for the life I was building. And I knew without a doubt that whatever happened, I had the power to shape my own story. One project, one step, one decision at a time.